A lot of folks have spent a lot of time talking about leadership and talking about the elements of leadership and the study of leadership. And I've always said I have not met one natural born airline pilot. I've met some that are great and really good, but I've never looked at someone when they were born, and people say there are natural born leaders. And I'm not discounting the fact that there are people that are born with certain gifts. I'm not discounting that. But every leader, every communicator that I know of have they have spent some time training, and they have spent some time growing and being mentored. And I'm excited. I see some of my mentors on the line who continue to kind of watch what I do and support me by not only their presence, but also by their information, by saying, hey, you know what? When you talked about this, you might want to say that. In fact, I'm just going to put out this disclaimer. Much of what I'm talking about now, I didn't know 30 years ago. In fact, a lot of folks didn't know 30 years ago. A lot of what I've learned about leadership has been in the last 15 years. Yes, there is rank. Yes, there are promotions. Yes, there are opportunities. And what I found was opportunities. Some people say you're lucky, and maybe that is what they believe, and that's the realm that they operate out of. I've always been taught that what some people call luck is opportunity meeting preparation. And because I'll tell you this, and awareness. Awareness is something we're gonna spend a whole nother lecture and webinar on awareness, because I know that I was in the right room at the right time. Some people say, "Oh, you weren't in the room at the right time." I know I was in the room at the right time, and it just didn't happen for me. And but not to be bitter, not to look back. I just want to tell you there are preparation steps, and so we're going to dive in tonight. I want to thank you. My name is John Alston, for those who I've never met before, and say hello to some of my friends who I have known and worked with before. I spent most of my adult life in the fire and emergency services, 31 years in Jersey City first, retiring there and becoming the chief in the New Haven Fire Department. But along that time, I've met some incredible people who invested in me or saw something in me that said, these are the things you need to do to grow. These are the steps you need to take to grow. Some of the conversations I didn't like. Hey, you know, stop, stop having those conversations with folks. If you're going to be in a leadership position, you have to take the high road. You can't always say what you feel and think. You have to take the time and slow down that reaction to what you heard. So don't just be a person that hears, be a person that listens. And we'll be talking about active listening as well. So I don't want to waste any more time. I want to get started. I'm grateful a bunch of folks are in the room. Um, Tonight, we're going to talk about identifying your leadership language, your leadership language. And that can come in many forms. When we talk about identifying your leader language, it is not just your posture, your position in an organization, it's how you communicate with people. It is not only how you see yourself communicating with people, it's how you believe you are perceived by other people. And then I got one even better for you. Under pressure, under stress, who are you? How do you communicate then? I'll give you an example. You're a different person when you're in your car on your way to work or your vocation or whatever, or even vacation. You're a different person than when you meet up with your coworkers, then you meet up with your family members, when you meet up with your spouse or your significant other, when you meet in a formal relationship, and when you do a public presentation. You're a different person. But under pressure, under stress, whatever you are is going to come out. That's what happens. That's who we are. So there are some ways, there are some several different measurement tools that are out there. Myers-Briggs, uh, Delaney, DISC. I'm a proponent of DISC. That's what I fell into, and I like it. It works for me. But there are different ways to identify your communication language, your personality language, that will help you develop what your leadership language is. Because you can say things a certain way, You can intend them to go a certain way, but there's a difference between intent and impact. And in the 36 years that I've been in the fire and emergency services, I came out of the old system. And I know Dr. O'Neill's on the line. I'm just shouting you out. I'm not name dropping. Dr. O'Neill had a training program that tried to help us with our leadership. And at the time, it was successful because all we had was, I remember his program was, I think it was EdCon. Um, there weren't many people that knew about assessment testing. Dr. Carl Holmes knew, it was new. It came out of the Midwest for the fire service. It's always been around in the military, always been around in police departments. But when it came to the fire service and came to testing, it wasn't the old drill and kill. It wasn't always what you memorized. It wasn't the multiple answer or guess questions and answers and exams. It came from an assessment. You were given a scenario, given a situation, and what were you prepared to do? And so that was new. That's absolutely new. All we had at those days, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the Q&A section, I think it was McAniff's Leadership in the Fire Service, Volume 1 and 2. And the reason I memorized that, I remember that, is because I put it on cassette and I tried to memorize it. It was 2 volumes and I still failed the test. All right. So it's a growing process and a learning process for me. And so with that, I'm also going to say there's a disclaimer that in my current position as an active fire chief, I cannot always practice what I know about the leadership styles that are out there, because each of them is very unique to an organization, a team, colleagues, environment, political structure. And so you have to study all of them and find out which ones work best, not only for the organization, but for the organization's mission. And so sometimes when you want to identify your leadership style, your style has to be a best fit, not what feels good. And so with that, that's our intro for tonight. And so I want to know, how do you define your leadership? How do you define the word leadership? So if I said a good leader should always blank, all right, I hope you have your pencils and pads because you're going to need them tonight. A good leader should always blank. I want you to fill in that line. I want you to fill in that line. In fact, I'm going to slow down. You know us Northeast talkers, we talk fast. Get the replay. Slow down. How would you finish that sentence? And how you actually finish that sentence, believe it or not, reveals a lot about how you view leadership. A good leader should blank, because when we say a good leader should do X, Y, and Z, that means we also know what a bad leader should not do, or we know what a bad leader does. We know what a good leader should not do. I've always said I've learned more from the people that have told me no, or that it's the wrong way to do it. I've learned more from them than I've ever learned from anyone else. So when you finish that sentence, and I actually want you to write it down, it's a work in progress. I want you to know. I'm going to open up the chat window as well, or the Q&A, and put those questions in there if you can. And don't worry about being graded on your answers. Don't worry about that. But what makes a good leader? Before you get into assessing your own answers, and I'm not going to bring those up, we actually have an exercise that's going to come up in a hot second, really, really quick. I want to share with you what James McGregor Burns said. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, a leadership expert, presidential historian, you name it, biographer, political scientist. He defined leadership in its quintessential terms. He talks about a leader in the vision realm. That leadership isn't just management, because people believe that management is leadership. When you manage things, when you're a manager, you manage things and a process, utilizing people to get it done. That's management. Leadership should be raising the bar. Leadership should be what it is, inspiring people to do more and to do better. Someone said to care for their people. Wow. Yes, absolutely. Who is that? Management says leadership is a skill set. Mike Briscoe, excellent. Robert, you're right too. It's about caring. Yeah, super stuff. Super stuff. Excellent. Excellent. But what he defines leadership is creating a vision that inspires people and inspires them for the future of this organization. It motivates and inspires people to engage with the vision. It manages the delivery of the vision, and it coaches, it builds teams, it mentors, it counsels, and there's so much more that it emulates what the vision and the goals of the organization should be. But here's the part: it helps people to see it too. It helps them to get there. Lamont Jones says a good leader should always influence others to do the right thing. Michael De La Fuente says good leaders should listen, communicate, and motivate. Absolutely. Absolutely. You're on the right track. You're absolutely on the right track. I appreciate that. Let's move forward. Leadership is a fluid process. I can tell you that. Absolutely. Chris Free says that leadership is dealing with a diverse crowd. I can assure you of that. Coming into the organization that I'm in right now as an outside chief, I already knew there were going to be barriers to my not only my leadership style, but the vision I saw for an organization. And it is fluid. It is ongoing. It is every day. In fact, the fluid was moving today with all the challenges we have in an organization, meeting our individual goals and needs. There was an old triangle, and I'll send it out under a separate cover, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and what we need to do. And one of the principal ones was self-actualization. Self-actualization has taken on a whole new meaning with millennials and Generation Z. And I know no one wants to be categorized in any of those types of things. And I always say to them, says, don't pigeonhole me, Chief. Don't categorize me with everyone else. So good. Then stop calling me old. Okay. Because there's ageism that's in effect there as well. So I tell them that leadership is a fluid practice because you have to be an adjustable tool. You actually have to meet people where they are. There are several people in different organizations, and I know I'm so grateful. Some of my friends that are online right now from business, from the military, shout out to you and thank you for your service and your sacrifice that for you and your families to protect our way of life. I want to thank you for that. My international friends that are here as well, I want to thank you as well. Leadership has to be fluid because it has to be adjustable and it has to be pliable. And guess what? It has to be resilient because it's going to be challenged. Your leadership is going to be challenged. Trust me, I know. So without that, get off me. Let's time to take a test. So here's what I want to do. Make sure you have a piece of paper, all right, and a pencil or pen. We're going to dive into something real quick. Bill Talbert was a psychologist along with Susan Cook Gruder, and it's called the Leadership Development Profile. I'm going to make a couple of statements. In each of the statements, there's going to be a letter and a number. The letter and number will correspond to the statement. I want you to just write that letter and number down if that statement resonates with you. I don't want you to disagree with it. I want you to if it agrees with you, it is something that you see in yourself, or if it's something that you see you want to aspire to because you want to help people grow. I want you to put those letters down. So grab your pencil and paper. It'll be a letter and number combination. Keep in mind that the categories and statements are organized so that they don't lead to anything. Just answer right off truthfully. Can you do that? Good. I know you can do it. Time to take the test. So when we say the individualist, so this would begin with an I, the individualist is a leader who is self-aware, creative, and primarily focused on their own actions as opposed to the overall organizational performance. They're exceptionally driven by the desire to exceed personal goals and constantly improve upon their own personal skills. Here are some of the statements that an individualist leader might agree with. This is confidential, by the way. So, this is self-examination time. It's not confession, but it is self-examination. Here are some of the statements that they might agree with. I1, a good leader should always trust their own intuition over established organizational processes. I2, it's important to be able to relate to others so I can easily communicate complex ideas to them. I3, I'm comfortable with process than sustained success. I'm much focused on process than sustained success. Sorry about that. I went back to coffee. All right. The strategists. Strategists are extremely aware of the environments in which they operate. They make structures and processes, or processes, tomato, tomato for you, that make their business tick. But they're also able to keep perspective. They're able to apply critical thinking and evaluate what could be improved. Here are some of the things a strategist might say. S1, a good leader should always be able to build a consensus in divided groups. S2, it's important to help develop an organization as a whole, in addition to growth of individuals. S3, conflict is inevitable, but I know enough about my team's personal and professional relationships to handle that friction. S3. Then there's the alchemist. Now, the alchemist, what distinguishes the alchemist from other action logics is their unique ability to see the big picture in everything, while also understanding the need to take details seriously. Under this type of leadership, no department, no organization, no employee is overlooked. They look at the whole picture holistically and look at all the important factors integrated onto the overall product, process, or professional output, as it were. Here are some of the statements that an alchemist leader might agree with. Now, I know before I even get off the alchemist thing, I came out of the old system. The old system was autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire. Okay, I guess it's just me out here. Okay, no worries. All right, the alchemist, beginning with the letter A, 1. A good leader helps their employees reach their highest potential and possesses the necessary empathy and moral awareness to get there. A2, remember you have to jot down just these letters, not the whole statement. It's important to make a profound and positive impact on whatever I'm working on. A3, I have a unique ability to balance short-term needs and long-term goals. If that's you, make sure that you put those letters down. Now, you can't put all of the letters down, obviously, otherwise we're going to have a whole nother webinar. I'm being facetious, I'm sorry. The opportunist. Opportunists are guided by a certain innate level of mistrust in others and rely on a facade of control to keep their employees in line. And they're out there. These types of people usually believe in the adage of an eye for an eye. Get what I'm saying? Here are some of the things that an opportunist might say or might resonate with them. And thank goodness they're just short. Q1, a good leader should always view others as a potential competition to be bested, even if it's at the expense of their professional development. I know some people like that. Enough said. Q2, I reserve the right to reject the input of those who question or criticize my ideas. Now, be honest with yourself. None of us are going to see your answers. Just be honest with yourselves. The diplomat. Okay, so all of these will begin with a D and the number that resonates with you. The diplomat is not concerned with assuming control. Instead, they seek to cause minimal impact by conforming to existing norms and completing their daily tasks with as little friction as possible. Here are some of the things that a diplomat might say or might resonate with. D1, a good leader should always resist change since it risks causing instability. D2, it's important to provide the social glue in team situations safely away from conflict. They avoid conflict. D3, I tend to strive in more team-oriented or supporting leadership roles. Think about that. The expert. Dun, 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 dun. We've all got them. I was told many years ago that there are no experts in anything. Life is just a constant process of learning and growing. And I agreed with that until I met some folks who did not want to learn and did not want to grow. And unfortunately, I had to work with them for a little while. So I've met some experts in my life. All right, off the soapbox. The expert is always at the front of the line of their field and continuously strives to perfect their knowledge and meet their own high expectations. Remember, their own high expectations. The expert is fantastic as a contributor and source of knowledge, but can usually stand to improve in the field of emotional intelligence. Now, we're going to have a whole nother webinar on emotional intelligence, IQ versus EQ. All right, there's a whole piece on that, but I'm not going to dive into that now. So here are some of the statements that an expert might agree with or might resonate with them. E1, a good leader should prioritize their own pursuit of knowledge over the needs of the organization and their direct reports. E2, when problem solving with others in the company or organization or agency, my opinion tends to be the correct one. Remember, if you're the smartest person in your group, you need a new group. Does that make sense? All right. So which leader are you? I know you're all waiting. I need a drum roll. Somebody give me a drum roll. All right. There are several types of leadership styles. We talked about them. I've mentioned a few of them, and there's some others we didn't mention, but here we go. Take a look at your notes and compare to the following table. And when I say table, I just want you to look at those that resonate with you, that you put down. And if you are scoring or resonating with most of the O's, the D's, the S's, the I's, and D's, it kind of tells you what type of leader you are. Now, here's the great thing. It doesn't mean that you're pigeonholed. What it means that most of the time, 66% of the time, 70% of the time, these are what resonate with you. And they could be not only what you are, who you are, but how you're perceived. We do something with my organization called DISC analysis, DISC personality analysis. This is not a sales call. I'm not doing an offer, okay? But if you want to know about your personality, you should be taking some type of personality inventory and or some type of an assessment, at the very least, to know how you communicate, how you are perceived by others, and how you perceive yourself. So I'm chomping at the bit. Who's going to be brave enough? Who's going to be brave enough to say what type of leader they are? Starting now in the chat. First one gets a book from me, by the way. So hope you're typing. Jim raised his hand. Cool. Jim, go for it. Sorry, Jim raised his hand. Michael, too late. We said in the chat, so that means I'm doing 2 books. So let's scroll back up, and the winner is, come on, Briscoe, you got in. You said S2. What is that? Strategic? All right. All right. So I'll go back in the log, and I'm going to give away 3 books, it looks like. Okay, no worries. I love giving away books. No worries. The more statements that you agreed with, the more likely you're going to practice a mix of those leadership styles. Because remember, we're in different situations in our families, in our homes, and alike. We're different when we're in our car, when we're with our cohorts, when we're with our homeboys, homegirls, when we're with our family, when we're in public, in our formal roles. So yeah, there's definitely a difference in who we are and how we're perceived by people. And let's talk about these real quick before we get away, because we really didn't dive into these, but I saw someone throw democratic up. So thank you for that. Democratic leadership. So for those of you who fell into that category of democratic leadership, you'll be happy to know that it is commonly the most effective in most situations, in most workplaces, organizations, and sometimes families. But in each one of those elements, and there are more, each one of those environments, I'm sorry, there are more, you have to know that there are some times that you cannot be democratic. If you're a parent, sometimes you cannot be democratic. If you are a boss, sometimes due to work rules, safety concerns, or general business practices, you cannot be democratic. I come from the fire and emergency background where it was a quasi, or some people say, and it is, paramilitary organization. And I was trained out of the old school. Most of the officers that I had were former military people or veterans. So you know what? Um, uh, Two steps back and a 180 was enough after you were given something to do. We were told, show up, shut up, and follow orders. Many of us know that doesn't work in this current work environment. So we have to be different types of leaders at different times based on our position, our rank, but most importantly, the people that we want to follow us. Because if you want to really be a leader and you're communicating with leadership language, and let me know, I'll tell you this, I'll let you know, I'm a lifetime student of this. I'm 60 years old and I'm still learning. I learned some things today when talking to people. So no one's figured this thing out completely, because people, relationships, workspaces, positions, roles, responsibilities, and context changes, environment changes. And so you have to be adaptable. And that's why we want to look at all the leadership languages, not to pigeonhole you, but to let you know that there are so many different ones out there, more than the three I grew up with, which was, well, actually, there were four: autocratic, democratic, laissez faire, and John Alston Sr. That was a leadership style too, I'll tell you. And it's still in effect. He's 91 years old. All right. So I say that to share with you that there are so many different styles. You not only have to identify yours, but identify the one that you want to be. Identify the one that's most effective. Identify the one that allows you the most flexibility and fluidity to grow, move. And if you're in the business of serving others, then you have to completely be flexible and adaptable, because democratic leadership may be one of the most effective styles, but it may not be the most impactful on a case by case basis. Solving an issue under a democratic style may be difficult. It absolutely may be difficult. All right, I skipped one. I'm sorry. Autocratic. All right. Autocratic is complete opposite of democratic, by the way. Autocratic leadership is rarely effective in the long term, because in this type of leadership style, cohorts, friends, and employees are neither considered nor consulted prior to direction, and are expected to adhere to the decision at the time and place stipulated by the leader. In other words, do as I say, do now. I can tell you that does not work with Generation Z. It does not work with Generation X, and or it does not work with millennials, because their principal questions, and I know some of you in the room, come into the room, it's going to be all right. We're here to work with you. That group, their principal questions are why and when. Why do we have to do it? And why do we have to do it now? Can't we do it later? What's the importance? And so those of us who have been in this business and in leadership for a long time, we have to adapt. if we want to get it done, because that's the workforce. By 2025, Generation X, Z, and the millennials will be the principal workforce, no matter where you are, no matter what your industry is. And so we need to be prepared for that. Autocratic does not work. Laissez faire. Who learned French in high school? Can somebody type in the text? Who learned French in one? Who learned French in high school? Two, who still speaks French? By the way, my French speaking friends, you're disqualified. I see you from the Caribbean. I I I know who you are. Okay, Michael De La Fuente, I know. Okay, got it. All right. Laissez faire, believe it or not, literally translates to the words "let them do." It wasn't hands off, which is what we were told in the United States. You know, do as you want. It was let them do, and can refer to leaders who hand over nearly all the authority to their employees, their cohorts, and their friends and subordinates and team members. That's fine if you're a young startup company and you want everyone's ideas and everyone's inputs. But again, depending on the structure, vision, and mission of your organization, that's not going to work. Someone has to be the decision maker at times. And then there are other times that you can move through the other processes or different leadership styles of autocratic and democratic. On the fire ground, there's very little time for democratic or laissez-faire leadership. I can just tell you that much. As one of my favorite bosses in Jersey City said, it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. But are you a strategic leadership leader? I saw some of you who actually put that in. Someone says dealing with a 21-year-old grandson, oh, is a witch. I got it. Wink, wink, wink. As you said, the why and when. Absolutely. And someone says, je ne parle pas français. Oh, oui, oui. Magnifique. Viola. Voila is what I meant to say. Strategic leaders are constantly vigilant, honing their ability to anticipate by scanning the environment for signals of change. They also have a tendency to want to study failures, their own and their teams, as a constructive way to find hidden lessons. Think about that. They're interested in how things work and how things don't work to make them better. Some might say that is kind of like falls into the realm of Kaizen. Kaizen, that'll be a whole nother thing. Look it up. Kaizn. Kaizen. It's good stuff. I'll put it in the chat. Now, the transformational leader or transformational leadership. There's a lot of information out there. There's several books that are written about it. One of the folks that I know who practices this, who's phenomenal, is Chief Reggie Freeman out of Hartford, Connecticut, who is a friend and colleague of mine. He not only preaches it, teaches it, and he lives it. And when we talk about transformational leadership, he and I get to talk all the time. I'm going to push him and probably Dr. O'Neill to come on. And I want to do something on transformational leadership, like really soon, like in the next month. Yeah, I'm putting the bite on you, Doc. I want to try and get that done. I think it's something important. Transformational leaders are always working to improve upon the status quo and push their team to grow and reach outside of their comfort zone. In one of my empowerment mentoring programs that I teach, the comfort zone is a lecture that takes about 2 weeks. We unpacked what the comfort zone is. And a lot of folks, even though they think they're stretching, they're still living within the comfort zone. The comfort zone, believe it or not, is not a comfortable place. That's what we talk about. We'll get to that soon. This type of leadership is greatly desired among growth-minded companies and organizations that have vision and that want to move forward, but respect diversity and respect the challenges of the vestiges of all of the types of leaders that have come before that formed the organization. Transformational leadership is is phenomenal for your organization because it not only moves people to another place, but it identifies the value of each person. The only one potential downfall is that transformational leaders can risk losing sight of everyone's individual learning curve because they tend to look at bands of movement. And especially if the correct type of coaching and direction isn't provided constantly. So you have to start with it and you have to maintain it. And depending on the structure of your organization, the change in the organization, either through attrition, promotion, or the influx of a new generation coming into your organization, it is very difficult sometimes to sustain. Then there's transactional leadership. Perhaps one of the most common types of leaders, these managers reward their employees for precisely the work that they're expected to do. In other words, they used to call it the 40-40. So if you showed up for 40 years and worked 40 hours a week, you got X, Y, and Z every week or bi-weekly. You were entitled to a pension, health benefits. It was transactional. We were trading not only your work experience, your time, your talent, your treasure, but we were also trading it for time because we knew after 40 years we had to hire someone to replace you. And if you look at some of the laws that we had early on in the 60s and early 70s, the age discrimination laws had really started to take root then because they were firing people at the age of 40 to 45 because why would I pay someone the highest rate and give them the highest benefits in my organization after 40 years when I could fire them at the age of 40 and hire two people for the same price? So transactional leadership, it works at a certain level, but cannot be sustained because depending on the complexity, the value of the delivery, the value of the product or service, you have to actually get people, inspire them to elevate their game. You have to also recognize under the system that Dr. Holmes taught me, the total quality management system, that you have internal customers and external customers, and that you get more out of the product and services when your folks are happy on the inside and they're happy on the outside. So transactional leadership helps to establish roles and responsibilities for each employee, but can also encourage employees to stick to doing just the bare minimum. Just they work just hard enough that you can't fire them or they'll quit. I'm sorry, just enough that you can't fire them, and you pay them just enough that they won't quit. That's transactional leadership in a nutshell. Then there's the bureaucratic leadership. Other phrases that can help describe this are traditional, old school. The fire service is full of that. The fire service actually came out of bureaucracy when they moved from the volunteer companies to established townships and the like. And I don't want to get into the history of the fire service, but I speak on that because I can relate that to any other business that I know. The old school was, again, do as I say, not as I do, and follow the company rule, company guidelines, because that's what we're here for. And that if you want to make change, there are steps that you have to go through to get to the top. I always encourage people. It was a model I learned from the American Red Cross that if you have an issue with the problem with anything that we're doing in an organization, you have a specific role and responsibility to support the mission and support the directives that go. If you have an issue, you challenge up through the chain of command, the pipeline, whatever you want to call it. You challenge up, but you support down. Because if you can't support what is going on from the top, then you disintegrate the bottom. And when you disintegrate the bottom, you fail the bottom fails, the foundation is lost. And so you challenge up, you question everything that comes down, you challenge up from your position, but you support down. Now, some people will call that towing the company line or towing the company line. No, there are certain situations in certain organizations where that is absolutely necessary. It could be the value of your stock in the industry and market. It could be whether people are going to follow orders or not, or whether there's hesitation, or you end up with disgruntled employees. We should always be forever working towards better communication. Communication is actually the best key possible. even when things are bad. So even in every type of leadership, every leader should be working to communicate better. And if you don't know your communication style, you probably need to take an assessment. And if you don't do that, ask your friends and family. In fact, if I want to know what you think about me, I say this all the time, I'll ask your children. They'll at least tell me the truth. Better communication is the key for every leader. Keeping your team motivated when you can, while you can, is important. As a leader, it's your job to inspire your workers, your subordinates, your team members, your cohorts. You want to make sure that they are motivated, and they're motivated. Someone said, all jokes aside, communication is the most important. Yeah, and we say it's a joke. It's a two-way street, but it really is. It's an ongoing process of both verbal and nonverbal communications in the workplace. Practicing your ability to delegate as a leader. I'm going to try and empower you now. That was one of the toughest things I had probably about 11 years ago. And it changes from job to job and position to position, is to delegate. There's an old joke about leadership, the three D's you have to learn: duck, dodge, and delegate. But many times people have problems delegating because they know the importance of what that task or that objective may be. And you can delegate authority, you cannot delegate responsibility. So you can assign certain tasks to folks, but ultimately, if they are the most important tasks for your organization and will reflect poorly on the organization and your leadership, you have to assume ownership with it. And so delegation is always a difficult time for many leaders, but it is a necessary process. You can't do everything by yourself. I've learned that. I've learned it the hard way. You can't do it everything by yourself. And so that's why we say practice the ability to delegate. We don't say delegate, we say practice, because you will find the individuals and groups in your organizations and agencies that you can trust with delegation. And you start small. And as you start small and it builds, you can do a little more. And I can tell you, when you find the right mix, you as a leader not only can focus on the mission and vision of your organization, but you can focus on yourself, because you're no good as a leader if you do not take care of yourself. And one of the things that you can do is not overburden yourself with things that you could have delegated to someone else. Then this class was put together just so that you could use all of the following resources. And I'm going to take them, actually. Give me a hot second, because I've been talking a while and I want to make sure that we get everyone a chance. There was a lot of research done to put this class together. And so what I want to do is, for you, I'm going to paste all of those resources in there. All right. I'm giving you all the links. You're peeking behind the curtain. Okay. I want to make sure that you can cut and paste what you need there. And I want you to take the deep dive. I took some of the smaller dives out of there, but I want you to take the deep dives in there. Let's take this one out. There we go. So that's from another lecture. All right. So I want you to have all of that. Now, Simon Sinek, I know a lot of people, Sinek, have seen his leaders eat last. I'm thinking about food now. Did you hear that, stomach? We're thinking about food. Simon Sinek has a bunch of TED Talks and YouTube videos up about leaders and leadership, some wonderful books. And he says, good eaters eat last. And it's about a story about the military that he built out. But one of his quotes that I love was, a boss has the title, a leader has the people. One of my mentors, trained by John Maxwell, John Maxwell says this wonderful quote. He says, if you're a leader with no followers, then you're just out taking a walk. I love that. Absolutely love that. So if you're leading, is there evidence that people are following you? I hope that the folks that led me in the past, that empowered me in the past, mentored me in the past, can see that what they sowed into me, what they shared with me, has taken root. And all I'm doing is what they did for me is to share that going forward. And I see them, the others that have gone, I miss them, but I just want to thank them for this conversation that we can have about leadership. We're at 7:49 Eastern time. I'm going to be on for a while. I'm going to look at the Q&A. I'm going to answer some of your questions. No links are shown. Really? Okay. Mr. Galvin. I shared them to, let's say, there you are. Thank you for that. Perfect. Thank you. Actually, there's one missing, but we'll worry about that later. I gave you the bulk of them. That's all. That's all the research I did for this class tonight. So we're at 53 minutes. Definitely want to thank you. You could have been anywhere tonight. I absolutely loved sharing this information with you. What we've been trying to do, my organization and I, we know that everyone's tired of Zoom. Everyone is working really, really hard. There's a lot of online training that's out there, but I wanted to make sure that we added value to you. I want to thank my friends and coworkers and some of the new folks that I've just met through this process. We're going to continue to push these webinars out so that we can have dialogue as leaders for not only our professional growth, but our personal growth. And as always, we're going to position ourselves so that we can share that information with you. And if you have any other further questions, I want to make sure you can reach me. You can QR scan that with your phones for our newsletter on the left. Join our newsletter. We push that out all the time. What's up, Barry Hogan, Jersey City Fire? Good to see you, man. If you need to contact me, you can scan that or visit our website. I've been fortunate in my career and in my lifetime to have a supportive set of parents, family, wife, children, mentors in my workplace, friends that I've traveled through this thing called the fire service and leadership, learning better communications, because I know that I'm not a really good communicator. People tell me, hey, you talk well. I'm glad you say that. But communication is a two-way street. So I'm continually trying to practice to be a better listener. And with that, next month, actually, our webinar is going to be on learning about effective listening, because I think that's the other part of leadership that's missing, that effective communication has to be about listening. Hearing is the physical act of receiving a sound. It is both energy, it's air, it is receptors in our eardrums, it is receptors through vibrations in our fingers, but listening is the process of taking those sounds and taking that communication and communicating back to people. Some hear, but many do not listen. I agree with you, Michael. Absolutely. So I'm going to open up the Q&A. I know the chat is going on. I'll do the best that I can. Someone said put the QR code back up, so I'll do that. But you all know how to find me, and I'll be sending you some additional information. I cannot thank you enough. I do not take it lightly that on a Thursday evening, when you could have been doing something else, especially during March Madness, that you took the time to spend it with us. Thank you so much for the accolades. I see excellent format. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. We're going to try and keep it like this because we don't want to waste your time. Absolutely don't waste your time. Each of these presentations has been packed so that we can deliver it in 40 to 45 minutes and leave enough time for you to ask questions. Detroit says hello. Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Scrine. Absolutely. Thank you. All right. We're opening up the Q&A. Dun, 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 dun. It's about putting the soldier first. Absolutely, V. Yes. Yes. I wholeheartedly believe that. Oh, Absolutely. Marquise Bush is asking about the Clifton Strengths Assessment. Absolutely. That is still in the category of the Myers-Briggs. Yes, it is. It is absolutely a wonderful assessment. Um, it is based on, believe it or not, it is all based on studies that were done in the 20s, actually 1917, 1920s, uh, with military, the Office of Special Services, um, SAS in the British Army. They wanted to be able to determine leaders based on scenario assessments, personality inventory, right? Personal inventory. I'm sorry, personal inventory, personality assessments to determine how you would react under a hypothetical situation. And so the ones that we use, the only reason I like DISC is it takes about 15 minutes. It produces about a 31-page report, but it is spot on because it is your responses. And it breaks us all into different categories. I will try to schedule a presentation on DISC very, very soon. Thank you. One of my squares said travel light. Oh, someone says they go back to the 6 C's. Wow. Someone said they go back to the 6 C's of fire department leadership. Thank you. Believe it or not, I've written a book called The 7 C's, and as soon as I can get it published, I'm going to get it published. But thank you. Wow, that's old school. Thank you. Please elaborate the challenge up but support down. Okay. Thank you for that question. I'm not going to type that. I'm just going to answer. So when we say challenge up, support down, many of us work in organizations that have some type of structure, hierarchy, as it were. My mentor, Dr. Carl Holmes, hated the top down. He really did. He always talked about flat-based management. In fact, he had a system called the overview concept, where you actually had everyone on the same line. They just communicated in and out. But he addressed our internal customers and our external customers. All right, something we had never heard before. It was out of the whole total quality management bag, the Rich Carlton model, the Dale Carnegie models. They were all put together. But what they basically said was, in the old system, if someone found something wrong, they didn't challenge it. They just either accepted it, and then if they had a problem with it, they told their subordinates and their cohorts, you know what, they don't know what they're talking about. I'll use it for an arm model. The third floor is crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. Did you just see the new order? Did you just see the new equipment? Did you just see the new policy that came out? This is ridiculous. But you were a supervisor in that organization. So if you didn't believe that it was the best possible policy, and now you're telling your subordinates and your team and your crew it's not the best possible policy, when you get to the action of that policy, they're not going to follow through because you just told them it was bad. You're not going to follow through because you believe it's not bad, but the top never knew. So rather than just push things down as we've done traditionally, when you have a problem with something that is coming down from the top or from a hierarchy or from a superior organization, I don't want to say superior, I don't get into those words, a supervisor or your direct report, it's coming down, you want to challenge back up, but support down. You can easily say, you know what, there's something coming down in the pipeline that we're going to be discussing in the future. I'm going to make sure that I'm real clear on it. And we're going to move in that direction because that's what the organization is moving towards. I know what organization I'm in. That don't smile at me. The fire service is 170 years of tradition, unimpeded by progress. I get it, but I am a devotee of change, and I do know that change is possible. All right, you challenge up, but support down. It's not towing the company line. It's making sure that we're all singing from the same sheet of music, not only for our own safety, but for the best product delivery we could possibly have to our organizations and to our folks. The newsletter is not accepting emails. I tried 3 and it keeps saying valid email required. All right, Reggie, just send me an email to, give me a hot second. Please don't all email me at the same time. Please don't do that. But that's my email. We'll get that. Thank you, Chief. All that I am, I owe. Hey, Tremaine. Good stuff. All right. I have another one. I found the DISC assessment to be the closest to my own opinion of myself. Yes, that's another reason that I like that as well. Now, it is at the top of the hour. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to stop the share because I should have did that before while we were doing the Q&A.